Hello, hello, hello. This is the Yarn Spinners coming back with episode 4.
Welcome back.
Yeah, so today we've got a treat because a friend of mine has come up from London, all the way from the Big Smoke to Manchester.
This is all anonymous, right?
Yeah, absolutely anonymous. His name is Ash.
Oh, wow. No.
He lives
Let's
in...
edit this out.
The cat's out the bag, mate. Just give us all your bank details.
But anyway, Ash is a very good friend of mine. He is a lawyer. We won't mention any companies or clients. None of that.
I think you've given them, to be honest, enough to condemn me.
Lives in East London. No, but we've spent many a good days discussing and talking and shooting the breeze, and I thought he would be a perfect person to have.
Spinning the yarn would have been a more appropriate
exactly.
phrase.
Yeah, that's why you're on the show, just to be annoying.
Sure.
But anyway, so how have you been, Tommy?
Yeah, good. It's been a busy day, but an enjoyable day.
Oh yeah, what'd you do? Margaritas again?
No. So that's a bit camp for me.
Wow. Also, the fact that way he said that's a bit camp sounded a bit camp. Tom, nice to meet you, by the way, for the first time ever.
Nice to meet you too. Welcome along to the podcast. I hope you're ready for all 5 of our listeners.
As long as one of those listeners is not my ex-girlfriend, we're perfectly fine.
She will find us.
Well, it's not.
You'll disappear one by one.
Yeah.
That's almost as bad as the threat that I had from Olia, isn't it, Dimitri? Remember in the car, FaceTime? I will find you and kill you. Cool. Nice to meet you too.
She's that's an old Russian joke. You shouldn't.
I see. I was being initiated. Sorry.
Exactly.
I failed because I shat myself.
Anyway, though, so Ash, what have you been up to today?
Been hanging out with you, and then went to see a friend.
Oh yeah, okay.
In Manchester.
What's his name?
The difference. Her name.
Oh,
and I wish to, allow her the dignity of being anonymous, which you have not allowed me. I'd went to see a friend. Yeah.
Okay.
An artist who's Manchester's hometown. Got shown a bit around the northern quarter and the beautiful city that's Manchester.
Do you want to give her a free plug? For her art.
Yeah, she got an artist pseudonym that she draws or whatever she does under.
Not that I'd know. Keeping it, still getting to know each other on the character basis rather than the work and professional basis.
Okay. So that's informative.
Dimitri, what have you done today?
I was with Ash, showing him around the shops in Manchester. Classic Dimitri.
Because he was looking to buy a Hoover.
Yeah.
He was struggling with the idea of buying a wireless Hoover.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not struggling with it.
Well, actually, he's not struggling with it. He's just a lazy git and he wants to look to buy a Hoover. Because that's what you do when a friend comes up to a new city. You take him around to look to buy a Hoover with you.
Well, if a shoe fits.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I had a more exciting day, though. He took me storage shopping because he hadn't actually bought anywhere to live and needed to put his belongings in storage. So fun day had by all.
Yeah, this is great.
Hey, you got a nice dinner out of it. You got a nice tour. You got a nice dinner out of it.
I did.
Anyway, this isn't the Bashing Dimitri show. This is the Yarn Spinners. So, on the agenda today, what have we got, Tommy?
We have got mental health issues and how they're still not understood in our modern society.
Ooh, hard hitting.
Yes. We have, I believe, dating across cultures. And the views and topics surrounding that area, and the social equality. That topic's going to rear its head and see where that goes.
Yeah, it's just because I've been watching a lot of Jordan Peterson videos, and he's raised some interesting points which I wanted to discuss and get your views on.
Okay, sure.
To be honest, but the dating one, which we're going to come on to second, but the dating one is quite interesting because obviously we've got 3 different cultures here with 3 different nationalities.
Where are you from, Tom?
England, born and raised, unfortunately. or fortunately, whichever way you look at it.
Oh, you just lost all our English listeners.
So that's 3.
Yeah, because the two are from Quinto, aren't they?
But we still have Ecuador. So
we'd like to get Ecuador's insight into this.
Yeah,
exactly. Guys, if you want to share some interesting stories, but the reason why I said this is because obviously I'm from Kazakhstan originally.
Mm-hmm.
Ash,
Bengali culture, but grew up in the Middle East, so third culture kid.
Oh wow! Okay.
Lots of experience here, I suppose, since 14 years of age.
Yeah, and you're born and bred, so we can share some interesting insights into the different cultures within our cultures.
Sure.
Within our respective nations. Anyway, so do you want to kick us off, Tommy, about the mental health issues and how it's misunderstood?
Sure. So, I mean, where do you begin? It's quite a large topic, but I think the thing that grabs me the most is people's misinterpretation of understanding things like depression or anxiety. I think a lot of mental health issues they all sort of get bundled into one sort of subcategory and then just sort of whitewashed. Do you know what I mean?
So, for example, how pervasive depression is, and it's a very there's a huge spectrum of different types of depression.
Yeah,
and yet you bundle it all into the person has depression, and not the sort of paranoid schizophrenia or the other different aspects that it might entail.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Have you obviously this is a fairly personal question, but have you had any, or do you know anyone, or is anyone in your family who suffered from anything that is related to mental health issues?
Not in my family. I've had friends who have suffered depression. Friends that I've known for a long time, and I never would have suspected that they had depression, and then all of a sudden, they go off the proverbial rails, and you discover this whole new side to them that they never felt comfortable sharing. They probably didn't even like thinking about it, which is understandable. But I think it made me realize how little I know about it, and how ignorant I felt, not understanding it, not knowing the telltale signs. When people just go missing. It was quite a shock for me personally.
Okay, and did they how did they tackle it? What did they do? Because obviously in the US, they're famous for just popping pills about it and not actually getting.
Yeah. So, I mean, the friend of mine in question, he, like I said, he went completely off the rails. He left home. He wouldn't get out of bed for a long time. Then all of a sudden, it just all got too much for him. He left. He went and slept rough for a few weeks. No one knew where he was. He was actually sleeping in a church. And he was put on to antidepressants, but he was also brought into sort of rehabilitation, not rehab, but counselling.
So he sought help as well. He knew there was some sort of mental health issue that he was suffering from.
He did know, but yeah, he was very cognitive of it. But at the same time, when he was having his bad days, he, in his own words, he just didn't give a shit. So he wouldn't turn up to counselling. But then, vice versa, when he'd have his good days, his coherent days, then he'd be really excited about going and getting better. So, possibly a bit manic depressive there or bipolar. And this is what I mean about, there's so many different types of depression. And it's difficult to diagnose, and it's difficult for people who don't suffer from mental illness to understand.
Completely understand that, especially because you can't really empathize with something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're speaking about this, I think one of the main issues is the fact that people are so unsympathetic to people who have mental health issues.
Yeah.
There's that lead singer from Kiss. I can't remember his name now.
Gene Hackman? No, not Gene Hackman.
It is Gene Hackman.
Is it?
No, Gene Hackman's the actor. It's Gene Simmons.
Yeah, Gene Simmons. That's it.
Gene Simmons. There we go.
How good we are with popular culture.
We're amazing.
I mean, come on, they've been out of popular culture for the last 20 years.
He's making a comeback, but hopefully he's finished now. Actually, I'll tell you why. It's because when Robin Williams committed suicide, one of the greatest actors of our generation, or when there was people on the rooftop who were contemplating suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah, the depth of despair. That Kiss lead singer Gene Simmons said, "I will them on. I egg them on to jump because if they're so ungrateful about how amazing life is because he's been offered such a great life, then they should jump off, give someone else a better try."
Wow.
That kind of, and he said that. I'm not taking it out of context. I definitely want to read up on making sure that I'm accurate before I get a claim against myself. But that kind of thing is pervasive amongst a lot of men who are less compassionate, I've seen. And for example, you have someone in the White House who's completely unsympathetic to those who are suffering mental health issues.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, but in terms of sympathy from especially the male side of the population, do you think they've got better at it? Do you think we're now seeing? Do you think with new generation of men, we're seeing a tide turning in the sense that they've become a bit more accustomed to sharing feelings and accustomed to expressing their feelings and actually saying to their friends, to professionals, to whoever that actually, I have a problem that I want to discuss with you? Or do you think it's still that macho culture that doesn't allow them to actually express what they feel?
Are you asking me?
Well, anyone really. Take your friend as an example and see what Ashley says as well from his.
Well, personally, I think it does depend on the individual, because some people are more susceptible to how they appear and social conformity. But I think a lot of it is disbelief. So they just think that something's sort of wrong with them, and that's just the way it is, and there's nothing they can do about it. So what's the point in telling anyone? It's probably a symptom of the illness, but essentially, I think a lot of people may not be able to recognise things in themselves, and so just dismiss it as that's just how they are. Don't see an issue, don't see a problem.
Also, there's confusion as to whether it's is it a personality trait or is it a mental illness?
Yeah,
coming from from the other side, you're wondering constantly which side of the aisle it is, and whether you should blame them or whether it's something that actually is far more of a disease that they're completely unblameless for.
I think this is the main issue from my perspective of depression and other mental illnesses in general. They're seen as almost fads, right? Because they don't manifest themselves a lot of the times physically until it's too late. A lot of people from older generations and new generations, to be fair, they don't see them as serious as they can be. And it is difficult, like you said. You didn't really know that something was wrong until your friend confided in you. And I have a friend who went through a period of depression, and I had absolutely no idea. And when that person told me that I think I was depressed for a long while, it actually hit me quite hard because you feel sort of helpless. First of all, you feel bad that you didn't notice, and that kind of, you start asking questions. Well, was I a good friend? Should I have seen this coming? Because you do feel like, well, if it's a good friend, then I should be able to see these kind of things.
Yeah.
And then secondly, you feel helpless because you can't really, it's not something that you just talk about and then you suddenly get better, right? If a buddy of yours breaks up with a girl, or a girlfriend breaks up with a guy, and then you talk to each other, they might walk away from the conversation feeling slightly better about the whole ordeal. Depression, I feel, and any other, I think, illnesses like bulimia and anorexia, it's not something that's so easy to tackle.
It's something you can cure.
Exactly. I mean, it's definitely, it takes a lot of therapy and a lot of sometimes medication to actually help that, especially with people who see themselves as fat or as too thin. In case of eating disorders, it's a very difficult situation to be in and to then find yourself in as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do you alleviate the stigma that's attached to depression, that's attached to bulimia and anorexia and all these different things? You know, for example, with something that's based on how the person perceives themselves, like anorexia, like bulimia, they see themselves as ugly. They see themselves as, too fat, when clearly the truth is otherwise. How do you try to assist that person?
I think personally, for me, it's about awareness and education, and also the media has a lot to play to it.
A lot of blame.
Yeah, I think when you have ideals in the industry, such as
Kim Kardashians and that kind
of. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I was reading about one of the Kardashians. I don't know which one it was, but she's gonna be reaching to be the youngest billionaire in the world.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because she's got her own cosmetics line,
and she does the full up lips and everything else.
Right, exactly. So she came with this thing where she started injecting her lips with filler or whatever it is.
Yeah, I believe it's Kylie Jenner, isn't it?
I've no idea. I've no idea which part of Kardashian clan is. but basically, her whole thing is that she's going to stop doing it. But she spurred a trend amongst girls, women, whatever, to put stuff into their lips to make them seem fuller. Now, my girlfriend said to me recently, "Do you think I should do this?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. You are beautiful as you are." Mm-hmm. In all seriousness, some people hate parts of themselves. I get it. We all have things that we would like to change. Height, whatever. But I don't think putting yourself under the knife will solve that desire for you to change yourself. I think if anything, it would make it seem like anything is changeable. So then you start, you see these celebrities who end up having, they get addicted to plastic surgery.
Yeah. And do you think they do that because they see the initial, and this is quote unquote, flaw in themselves, something they don't like, they get it fixed, and then they fixate on something else?
Yes, it's trying to obtain perfection, isn't it? Especially with Hollywood.
Yeah.
And with cosmetic as opposed to corrective procedures, you're always trying to adhere to a Brad Pitt if you're a guy, or a David Gandy or something else. The media industry, as Dimitri pointed out, is hugely culpable for a lot of the flaws that you've seen.
Yes. But I do think it's getting better. I think women are now getting to prominence, not just because they're beautiful, or not just because of their looks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They get into prominence because they do something, because they achieve something. And that's good. There should be more of that. But I think still predominantly, you go through a magazine rack, right? And you see a lot of magazines where it's like, do this to your body, do this to get a summer body. And okay,
are you beach body ready?
Exactly. Like, I'm a huge believer in being healthy, right? Obviously,
that's a lie. I just want to put that out.
Let's not. Just because I smoke, But if you are overweight for your height, I get it. I get that you should do some exercise, eat well to lose weight, because that will help you in the long run and in the short run.
There's nothing wrong with setting a standard.
Exactly. But the standard is not you need to look like this to be good. The standard is just be healthy. No matter how, if you're 80 kilograms and healthy, like The Rock. The Rock is theoretically obese. If you look at the BMI
scale. BMI scale, fine, sure. But everyone knows, most people know that's...
Exactly. Yeah. But that's the thing, right? So whatever is healthy comparatively and relative to your body, that's fine. But to tell girls who are already healthy, that asking them the question, are you beach ready? And then, do you want to do this? And do you want to keep your man? can't put women and you know guys get this with GQ and Esquire and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It can't put girls and boys and men and women into a good space. Well, that's why I just don't read those magazines.
There's that crazy example of Jessica Ennis, that she was actually considered to be fat by some of the other coaches.
I remember that during the Olympics.
Ideal woman in terms of obviously athletic prowess.
I mean, whoever turned her down because she was considered to be fat is an idiot.
There you go. But there's also, this starts. You have to understand where this starts. In America, maybe less so here. Child beauty pageants.
Yeah,
this madness, isn't it?
It's crazy. I could never imagine having a daughter, and straight away sort of piercing her ears and developing her into someone who wants to go and compete in a beauty pageant. And you have to have, and it's not just beauty either. You have to have, little tricks and stuff that you can do. Like juggle and sing at the same time, and
exactly.
And it's just like, what are you doing to your child? Like, what, number one, you're making them be someone that they're not, and you're not letting them grow as the person that they are naturally. And number two, you're making them believe in things that the children shouldn't have to believe in. Do you know what I mean? Like, make
no intrinsic value in terms of, what she could create and add value towards the world.
Yeah, and it's creating a really false image that she thinks she has to project to the world to be accepted.
Yeah, I think in general there needs to be better awareness of mental health issues, and I think we're getting there, especially in the UK. There's mental health awareness months, and there's mental health awareness at work. I got an email from when I moved up from London to Manchester from our HR, one of our HR directors saying, we understand that it can be a difficult time to move from one place to another. And to move into a new place, if you want to discuss anything, do give us a shout.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that. I don't need it, but I appreciate the fact that the help is always there. And I think that is the kind of thing that can help people with mental health issues.
But from my understanding, a lot of that help that's provided by in the UK, for example, is actually done by a lot through the charities. It's not actually done by through the NHS or to the government body or what it should be done as. For example, if it's a proper illness, as a proper in inverted commas, for example, if it's a cancer or a serious or pneumonia or anything like that, shouldn't that be given the same sort of precedence as a mental health issue?
Yeah,
I mean, and it should be. But these are being dealt with by charities, which are always usually underfunded and which are always unable to be able to apply the same type of time and therapy that you need.
I have a friend who's a mental health nurse, and she lives up country, and she feels so much stress from her job because there is not enough staff for the amount of people that are suffering from mental health. So recently her workload went up from, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it went from something like 15 patients a week to 90.
Wow.
And you're just like, how am I supposed to juggle 90 patients in a week? So all of a sudden, not only are you putting pressure on the workers and putting those people under, mental, strain, but you're also reducing the amount of time that some of these people need to talk to people. And if you're talking to a depressed person, or someone with really low self-esteem who's, thinking of ending it, and they get a text message through saying, oh, your nurse won't be with you today because they don't have time, and they'll think, oh, I must be worthless. You don't know how that message, as innocently and honestly as it may be conveyed, you don't know how someone with mental illness is going to take it because they are mentally unstable and ill.
I mean, thankfully, what you have now is that Jeremy Hunt has gone, but he's been replaced by Matt Hancock, who was the former culture and media and sport minister. But
he's not a doctor.
No,
so
exactly.
As someone who's not a doctor, it goes into something which involves a doctor.
Exactly, but it's progress somewhat because Jeremy Hunt was
terrible for the NHS.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just logged onto the NHS website, and for those of you who may be listening or who want to help someone who there's Mood Zone. There's loads of links to mental health helplines that you can call or consult for some information. But as I think as Ash pointed out quite correctly, is that this isn't treated by the NHS because they're woefully understaffed anyway.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not taking away the acuity of the situation of any mental health issues or diseases, but they just can't cope with the physical side of health that for them to take on anything else, which isn't an excuse at all. It doesn't justify that they don't do it. But I think we should all be supporting the charities like Young Minds, like the Samaritans, like No Panic, and Mind, especially. That's a famous one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's sad. I think it's sad that there are still people who fall through the cracks and that they feel that they can't talk to anyone. And I think there's some mental health issues which make you think and make you become more introverted, and therefore you don't talk to people. And I think we as a society are striving to get to a better place where we actually help those people and we tell them that you're not a burden if you have an issue. You just need to ask for some help. And I'm sure that friends and family are there to help us. So
I think that's something you touched upon about friends and families being there to help. One of the biggest proponents for charities and they are young people being there to and families being there for their families, but so for the ones who don't have those, we talk about one of the causes of depression being obviously media and everything else, but one of the causes is something that you can't help. It's loneliness.
Yeah,
and a lot of old and elderly individuals who are put in old people's homes or just become widowed, they don't have anyone there. And they did an experiment. A young individual lived in the same manner as someone who is old, who has no one, who has been recently widowed, and lived in that same kind of loneliness that they had. And, these are one of the acute causes of depression. And he really struggled doing this video feed when he was just trying to map how he was feeling and what was going on, because he had no human element, human touch. And a lot of people are now spending a Christmas Day, for example, with someone who's lost someone, or who's lost their main support, who's lost their dog, if they're blind, for example, and they have less of a way. And these are things that you can all do as a community. You don't necessarily need hospital support to be able to do this. And a lot of nurses and a lot of doctors are able to provide this kind of support because that's their day job, but it's not necessarily their job description. And so that's something that could be alleviated just by everyone, really.
Yeah, I think with mental health, every little helps in terms of support and just being with someone. Even the things like when babies are first born, they have to be pressed against skin to sort of calm down and feel safe. And this, and if that's such a innate and animalistic sort of trait that we have as humans, that doesn't go away just because you grow older. I think if anything, it becomes more acute because you get used to society and you get used to people and interaction. So,
yeah,
I think look, we're not going to spend enough time on this topic, but by any means, or any stretches of imagination. And I think, it's a great shame of that. But do visit the Mind website and the NHS website and just talk to people. Help people out that are not feeling 100% in any sense of the way.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So let's move along to dating, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because
from depression.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. This is very, very seamless of you.
Yeah. Well, there is no good way to end that. So obviously, Tom and I are in stable relationships.
Thanks for that.
But there's some merit to being a single, successful young man in London. So, can you describe your trials and tribulations?
Oh, good Lord Almighty, we have no time. We have literally no time for trials and tribulations of a single young man. There's books and memes of trying to understand the opposite sex and just failing miserably in this new day and age of Tinder and everything else that there is there.
Well, interesting you said Tinder, right?
No.
You're a very idealistic, very traditional, classic sort of guy, right?
Am I traditional?
Yeah, sort of. in terms of in your views on dating and courting, etc.
Well, I think the woman should pay half. That's not traditional.
No, but you would, the way that you treat women in terms of you don't nag, you don't, do all these things that pickup artists do. How do you see? Have you embraced technology?
I think I've embraced technology, and any medium that allows for further communication and meeting people who are outside of your normal daily interactions is a great thing. A great thing. Especially when you're meeting, what I enjoy is meeting people outside my own cultural norms, because technically I don't really have, a plain vanilla culture, and meeting people from my own. Dimitri asked me this earlier. What do you look for? You look for intellectual stimulation. You look for people who do different things, ambition, in the sense of not just monetary achievement, really not monetary achievement at all, but having some kind of purpose and all those different things that we find attractive in the opposite sex. But for me, the main headache is some of the cultural issues that you have in the city, in London, as you touched upon, which is how judging a man by his CV.
Yeah, so this is I didn't know this, right? But apparently, in some East Asian countries, girls choose their prospective dates by their CV.
And in some industries, I mean, how many investment banking girls do you know who date social workers or the other like?
I think, yeah. I mean, predominantly, if we're going to talk averages, not many. What are your thoughts, Tom? I know it's been at least a decade since you've been out on town, but
wow,
hasn't been a decade. So I mean,
how long it's been, which is why
all I know is it's this ball and chain is getting heavier.
Is your knee getting a bit wobbly, mate? Is that it?
Ankle's really sore, mate. Really
of course it is. Of course it is. Or it's about that time as well.
Anyway,
Robin, if you're listening, get ready.
You won't be listening. She's not a fan of you.
Oh, that's harsh. So racist as well.
Not racist. She's just very broad in the people that she doesn't like.
Oh, don't call her. We just discussed mental health, mate. Don't call her fat.
Wow. All right, that's a bit weird. Anyway, so what did you say? So I mean, I'm actually quite astounded that you said that people look for prospective partners by flicking through CVs.
Well, I mean, not in the literal sense. I mean, sometimes
no. Of course,
LinkedIn.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at these elite dating sort of ideas, like whatever it's called. It's called there's inner circle. There's elite dating or whatever else there is. You have the idea that there's a person in suits who can obviously offer you more financial security, and that's the crux of the matter. You're trying to go for someone who can offer you something in terms of financial stability, and that shouldn't be the basis.
Complying to the norm.
Yeah.
But what if you're not looking for necessarily financial stability from your partner to benefit from it? But what if you're looking, because inner circle is more about meeting people of the same
it's networking almost as well, yeah.
Right? Yeah. You're kind of keeping, it's a bit like the royal family, keeping
quite ancestral.
Keeping it within yourselves, amongst yourselves. So, I mean, I see
keeping the bloodline pure is what you're trying to say.
Well, I didn't want to bring that up. I didn't want to bring eugenics into it.
Just say it as it is.
But I'll tell you what. So, dating in Russia, and I was saying this to Ash recently, that we went to a 31st birthday to Moscow last year. Jeez, it's been a year. And we saw a lot of incredibly beautiful girls with
a questionable taste in men. Questionable taste in men.
But that's from our perspective, right? If you look at it from, and this is what it always is about. It's all about you looking at someone and we all judge, right? Mm-hmm. But these girls were dating, and trust me, my friends have told me that I'm punching above my weight, which is fine. Overachieving, always.
You are.
But it's things like some of those guys were definitely punching. I mean, it was. If I'm punching, they're in the lot. I mean, mate, they are 3 divisions down. So
we're surely 3 divisions up because
no, but they're down from their ladies.
Sure.
But it's like what I said to Ash is the girls that are there are used to the fact that there is no stability in Russia for people. So what happens is that you get a lot of girls who choose to go for someone who can provide for them.
Okay.
And that...
Are those usually bad-looking men?
Not necessarily. But the thing about Russia is that a lot of those guys just stop looking after themselves. Right? Or they're not necessarily the most good-looking guys because those guys... well, I don't know. Whatever the case may be, if you took the population of that party and you thought and you took that as a representative, it was astounding, wasn't it? Didn't you think?
In what sense? I mean, there's a lot of good-looking girls at that party.
Exactly, and their boyfriends or husbands.
Not so much. Thankfully, let's definitely keep this one anonymous.
Yeah. But
they look a bit stronger than us, albeit they've been in quite a few boxing matches because their faces showed that. So yeah, that was clearly evident, and they had a lot of. I think it was obvious that some of them had huge financial capital.
Oh yeah,
huge financial capital. And that's clearly something that a lot of the girls were interested in. And it's the age-old thing. Like, obviously, if you earn the money, you earn the power, and then you earn the lady, or whatever that is in Scarface. It's always been that case. But it's in this dating game where you want to validate yourself to someone because of your qualities as a human being, as opposed to your, what I would call background noise.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is our animalistic instinct. I think we want to go for the alpha. We want to go for someone who can provide. And so we do. We follow the alpha leader, right? And there's no different for girls who want to get a life partner who will satisfy those needs. I'm not saying that all of them will be that way. I'm not saying that all girls look for an alpha. Some girls don't. Some girls want to have a nice, sensitive guy who satisfies them emotionally. Fine. But I think if you look at the majority of girls, they want that security. They want that security that they don't have to think about what they're going to eat tomorrow or how they're going to, survive the next month. And I don't blame them, and I don't blame myself. I think, if I was a girl, I would want to make sure that my future husband isn't just a nice guy. That's nice, but there are also nice guys who can provide.
Can we mix this up a little bit?
Oh,
and
okay.
Because we're talking about dating across cultures, because of internet dating, etc. How about homosexual relationships across cultures? Because I'm sure
I don't know.
Homosexuality.
Tom,
I'm sure you don't.
You've got the experience. Let us know.
Well, I have no experience, but I'm just wondering, if it makes it a little bit more accessible for them, but is also, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I think it's unfair to just look at the heterosexual view of it.
Yeah. I agree.
So,
I mean, to be fair, I haven't had that conversation with my friends who are gay.
I have. One of my good friends, Phil.
What was his?
Phil makes very little in terms of remuneration because he's a lecturer at a university and does research for UCL in neuroscience, I think it is. But he makes very little in comparison to his partner who's involved in the civil service or in the services sector.
Shout out to Phil from UCL.
No, please don't. I'm sure he wants to keep this private. But they
cuts out the bag somewhat.
They look at it. I didn't say his full name, did I?
How many professors called Phil in neuroscience there at UCL?
Quite a lot.
They're all Phil. That's one of the requirements.
Don't you edit these things? Or
no, we don't.
Oh, you don't.
That's the whole point of it. No, but okay, go on. Sorry.
No, you're not sorry. But anyway,
he's definitely not sorry.
I'm not.
But he, they do things in an adult manner in the sense that they just obviously it's proportionate. The guy who earns more pays more and takes care of things in a more suitable way. They look at each other and on the basis of their values, their shared values. They've been together for many, many years, and it's exactly what you'd want from a heterosexual relationship. It's absolutely no different, which is why I don't think it's necessarily any differences whatsoever when we're trying to make this analysis.
But I'm talking from a completely uneducated point of view here in terms of homosexual relationships,
which is the basis of all your conversations.
You just know big words and where to put them.
Here we go. The single man speaks. But
I'm happy.
But for me, it's from what I can see, I don't think it necessarily translates in the same way. I'm not sure if Professor, if he chose his partner based on his ability to earn money.
He didn't.
Right. And I'm not, and I think that's more of the case in homosexual relationship than less.
Because they have a smaller pool to choose from?
No, because I think a lot of the time, for right or wrong reasons, the society conditions them to be successful as a man, because the assumption is that they will have to provide for a family. Now, when they get to a certain age where they can be comfortable and come out and et cetera, they're still conditioned to be successful at whatever they do. And I think they will then...
You touched upon something which actually is a stark difference between homosexual relationships. In most homosexual relationships, was the previous case. Obviously they can adopt now. And heterosexual relationships. There is no sort of pressure of having children and having to provide for them and having the monetary basis for that and having being out of work for potentially 9 months. Not
if you're an adult, but if you're a child, everyone assumes you are all heterosexual beings. So if you're at school and you're a gay kid, you are conditioned, if you're a girl or a boy, to do certain stereotypical things that are relevant in society. Until you reach that age when you're comfortable enough to come out. So I think a lot of the times, the girls feel pressure to date boys and then adopt certain stereotypical female traits and certain roles. And the guys are done the other way. I've always, and it could be just the circles that I run in, but most of the homosexual guys that I know are incredibly successful on their own merit. And they choose other guys who are also, they don't choose them, but they end up with guys who are equally in this. So either it's a pool of friends that they, or the pool of people that they talk in, mix in, or as I said, I could be completely wrong. So if there's anyone who, guy or girl or trans, whatever the case may be, if you want to chip in the comments, do let us know.
But the pressure point is different, isn't it? Because, for example, you said that girls want to make sure that they're taken care of. What's the crux of that matter? They want to be taken care of because, for example, they might have children and need the father to be there, for example, when unfortunately women earn less because it's seen by certain employers, including Lord Alan Sugar, that it's a risk to hire them because they'll go on maternity leave, which again you have to support them, and earnings capacity is reduced. And you have all these outstanding issues, but homosexual men wouldn't have those issues.
Yeah.
So, changing the subject ever so slightly, Ash, I've forgotten terribly of me, but with your upbringing in different cultures, how is homosexuality viewed in those cultures?
Oh, unfortunately, the cultures that I've been grown up in have within Islamic countries, there's a very regressive slant in terms of understanding homosexuality. They don't realize, or they won't accept, that is something a man is born with. So they're very unsympathetic to their cause. They see it as some sort of mental retardation or a mental illness. Or even if they are willing to go that further bit of accepting that they're born with it, or it's a genetic issue or anything else, or issue at all, they want to label it as well. It's not normal, and therefore it's an abomination of sorts, and it's a mutation. If they're born with it, it's a mental illness. Unfortunately, that's the issue. And of course, in the Islamic countries, it's seen to be as sinful in the greater context of the sort. And that's in a Christian country or any other else, which is traditionally religious. So unfortunately, that whole aspect there, I know individuals who are gay who are from my culture who hide it and who've gone married to women.
Sure.
And so, they condemn this woman to sometimes a few years or a lifetime of unhappiness, very much like Elton John got married to a woman back in the day.
True.
Didn't he?
Yeah.
So, true.
So how about dating across cultures in the countries that you grew up in? How is that?
No dating in Saudi Arabia.
Is that sure?
Obviously, because you had this idea that there's a segregation of men and women, and I have no idea how it works apart from being arranged throughout. But obviously, I grew up in a much more liberal environment. Went to school where there wasn't segregation and all these issues. But
international school?
Yeah, it was a British and Dutch school, which thankfully you were allowed to speak to women and obviously had that sort of exposure. When Dimitri touched upon East Asian cultures, or even some other cultures which are far more materialistic, I think that's a high society, and a lot of these cultures want that man who's from a doctor, accountant, engineer background, or want a girl who's a doctor or similar, all these different things. They want the education, which is rubber stamped seal of approval, which is no indication on the character. I think that's an issue. For example, dating an artist. Imagine going to a very traditional Bengali or whatever family and saying, "Hey, dating an artist." That would be possibly shocking in some circles.
Wow.
Yeah, it's similar, to be honest with you, in former Soviet cultures as well. It's, as a guy, you were pushed to not do art and actually to not pursue any
go for the sciences
hobbies, but go for hard sciences.
Yeah.
Including businesses and economics, etc., etc. Because, I mean, it was funny because you go there now and it's slowly changing and you can see that, but they're still 10, 20, 30 years behind what happens here, which is you have courses in arts, and you have courses in film and drama, and all sorts of recreational activities which are taken as professional because there are actually jobs for them here. Whereas in former Soviet countries, there are very few jobs. They don't see born and bred graphics designer.
It doesn't have economic value.
No, for them, it's just, well, we'll just get some English guy to do it for us, rather than, well, why not nurture that talent at home? They don't see the benefit to that.
It's strange, and you have to admire for these authors and these artists from those cultures who managed to break through that mold. Because they've suffered a huge amount of adversity. And you read about Salman Rushdie's early life. He barely made anything when worked in an advertising agency and barely made very much, and grew up with a lot of pressures against him. And then he wrote, and he wants to become a full-time author. I remember it clearly, reading about it, how he tried to quit his job and said, "Look, I'm quitting my job." And the guy said, "Oh, you want a raise?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I want to be an author actually. So I'm definitely quitting my job." He said, "Oh, no, you want a big raise." And that's the thing. If you write, you're not going to make much money.
Which is weird, right? Because it's coming from, like, in Soviet, in former, like, old Russian literature is incredible.
Yeah, exactly. Bengali culture is the same.
And it's the same. Like, you've got artists, you've got musicians, but
filmmakers,
for whatever reason, that's not recognized as a good thing to do. Like, you take you talk about Salman Rushdie, it's the same as if we take Tolstoy.
Or Bulgakov, the girl who died in poverty.
Exactly. The guy died in poverty, but he produced works of art, which he's a writer, right? Master and Margarita is one of his most famous works. But they acknowledge that he's a great writer, but they don't acknowledge that you need to nurture that talent to provide those great writers.
A lot of these guys, if they lived 200 years, they would have made incredible money. Because Van Gogh, he also died in poverty, but then he's only recognized after his death, after the fact, after the tragedy. And he also suffered depression in the worst form possible. Then he suddenly became hugely renowned.
Yeah,
and same thing with
Picasso as well, wasn't it?
Well, I think Picasso was slightly more
recognized.
Yeah, he was more recognized. Same with Salvador Dali and etc.
Still died in the back of a taxi though, didn't he? Or got hit by a taxi or something?
Yeah, I mean, you can't help that. I mean,
no, but I'm sure he was dressed as a porter or something.
I'm not sure he died as poorly as Van Gogh did, or as poorly as Bulgakov did. But I think that kind of shows you the trend upwards in terms of recognition, and it being recognized as a beneficial form of beneficial skill. Things like you've got writers who are now writing full time rather than doing it as a part-time job. Stephen King, Dan Brown, you name a popular writer. Even people like J.K. Rowling lifted herself off the poverty line.
And she just writes stories on the back of a napkin.
Exactly, right? So it's good that it's recognized, but in our cultures, in Ash's and my cultures, it's not recognized. They read this and they are fascinated by it, and they go to the Louvre and they go to the National Gallery in London, but they don't recognize that these things need to be nurtured.
There's no state sponsorship of it at all, is there?
No, not really.
Can I direct a question at you, Dimitri?
Yeah, sure.
So, with yourself and your girlfriend, I know you're both from a similar sort of country in Russia and Kazakhstan. They're not too dissimilar, I imagine. But you are of different heritage. So when you're in Russia, for example, because I've never been to Russia, but do you get, in some areas, do you get a look? Do you get a double take?
In terms of when we're together?
Yeah.
No, because in Soviet times, a lot of people were mixed around. So mixed race couples are not seen as a new thing.
So how about over here? Because I do remember a story of you. It wasn't exactly racist or anything, but I remember you telling me about you in a bar in London somewhere, and some guy kept coming up to you and insisting that you were Japanese.
Classic.
And asking what part of Japan you were from.
He was just he was an incredible guy. So he basically asked me where I was from, and when I told him Kazakhstan, he told me no, I'm from Japan actually. So I was like, well, no, I'm from Kazakhstan. He's like, nah, come on, which area of Japan are you from? And I was, for me, it's like, look, that's fine. You see a guy with an Oriental face, and you assume a country. That's fair enough. If I saw a white guy in a street in Africa, right, I would I would go up to him and talk to him in English. I wouldn't know whether he's English or not, but I would start the conversation with that, assuming that he might be. So
That's a safe bet, though, because he came up to you and didn't ask you in Japanese, did he?
No, but then I don't think he knows it. You know what I mean? I think English is a bit more widely spoken than Japanese. But the whole point is that he took a punt. What I wouldn't do, what he did, is insist. So if I came up to the guy and say, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Are you from England?" and he would say, "Actually, no, I'm from Holland." I wouldn't say, "No, but come on, which county are you from?" But it's just fine, and these things happen, and he wasn't abusive, he wasn't abrasive or any way about it.
But what I was alluding to was, do you get the look when you're with your partner in this country?
I don't notice it, to be honest with you.
I don't think so.
I don't notice it, especially in London where there are so many different cultures and so much mixed. It'll be interesting to see how it's like in Manchester, because obviously it's a smaller city, only 500,000 people, and That'll be interesting to see. But then again, even here, there are so many foreign faces that I'm not sure they would take a bat an eyelid in that sense.
In my culture, it goes
maybe not in this
a bit deeper, actually.
Sorry.
Sorry, no. So it goes a bit deeper because of religious differences and cultural differences between Sikhs and Hindus and Muslims and all that sort of thing. I remember a Muslim family was adamant that a friend of mine who's Muslim introduces the girl to them because they wanted to convert her from the Hindu that she was, because they wanted to ensure that the kids were Muslim. That kind of thing.
Wow.
Adds a lot of friction and tension. I mean, they laughed it off, and my friend laughed it off. But I'm less diplomatic. Someone said that to me. The concept that God asks people to choose who they fall in love with, choose what they believe, and the basis of what they believe is just madness to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
What about yourself in terms of when you do you, and I think it's part of our generation, you don't see mixed race couples and think, oh, that's weird. You just see it as two people who are together.
Well, absolutely. I mean, whatever race, culture, or orientation, I don't ever double take. If I see two women, one black and one white, holding hands down the street, I don't sort of get my phone out and take a picture. I just think, oh, okay, cool.
I think it's again cultural.
And then
I think so.
My friend was in Italy. His girlfriend is originally from somewhere in Africa, dark skinned, and he's Persian, and they got mass loads of looks. Look at Balotelli; he gets constant, bananas thrown at him at Italian stadiums and in Russia as well. It's bizarre for people to see individuals of African descent. So it depends on culture, I think, rather than generation and obviously education and exposure. There was that individual who said that traveling and being exposed to something that you're not necessarily exposed to on a day-to-day basis is defeats all prejudice, is the enemy of all prejudice, and they're right.
Absolutely.
Anthony Bourdain was also surprised whenever he ever went traveling.
R.I.P. A.B.
Exactly, and again another sufferer of depression.
Yeah, true, and it was interesting actually. Talking about this whole generation versus culture, and I think you're right, because I look at it always through my rose-tinted glasses of being in the UK, that I don't think it's different. I don't think it's weird. I see two guys walking around, and I don't think, oh my God, the two gay guys, that's so weird. It's just two people who enjoy each other's company, and whatever. They don't, it'll be weird for me to think anything else. I think it would be weird for me to think anything else. Some people wouldn't.
It was weird for me when I was young to see two guys together, because that's something so entrenched in Arab culture. That was something that was wrong.
That's wrong. Yeah. I suppose it's a. Yeah, I think look, overall, I think we're blessed in the sense that we are in a country where this is becoming a non-issue, right? They've legalized gay marriages. Gay couples can now adopt, and that's all moving in the right direction. I mean, why the hell would you want to prevent two people who are in love going through a ceremony which is, I mean, let's face it, is farcical anyway, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah. To some people, marriage is a huge thing, but to a lot
between
of people,
a man and a woman, as many traditional Christians would advocate, and actually a huge part of the Tory party voted against it.
Let's keep politics out of it, because we will get into massive.
Just an observation. It's not really politics.
I mean, look, I think there's, as I said, we're in a good space at the moment in the UK, and I hope that other countries look towards our country, the Irish, the Australians, and the Americans, where they legalized it, although with a lot of opposition, and actually adopt the same view, because I think it's only beneficial.
From whom, Dimitri? Oh wait, sorry, that's a political observation.
No, it's just it was faced with opposition. It wasn't faced necessarily by. Opposition came from religious sects and society communities. It came from traditionalists, conservatives, and conservatives in the sense of lifestyle and culture rather than political view. It wasn't necessarily political, because actually I thought the way that we dealt with it in the UK, and bearing in mind that was put to the Parliament by David Cameron, right?
Yes, it was.
I thought we actually did it quite well in terms of, at least in public, it was a unanimous decision to make it legal.
Well, I mean, they had votes against it, of course.
Yeah, of course, no, but that's fine. But that's not everyone's going to agree to everything. But predominantly it was a positive reaction. Ireland.
I find it odd. I do find it odd that people could be adverse to and vote against legalizing or
yeah.
Well, no, just something that is natural.
Well, that's the thing. There's a lot of people, on the religious right, they believe it's an abomination, and that you can be cured of it.
Yeah, that's just mental.
Schools for curing homosexuality in the UK and huge in the United States. And even so, with that said, you've got a lot of people trying to prevent homosexuals from adopting, because the adoption process is so opaque in itself. And again, that goes into gender roles. What's the predefined gender roles? Is there a mother and father figure, and all these different things? And does there have to be? That it goes into a lot of complexity that people don't want to necessarily address. And so they'd rather have children in a damaging foster home rather than two loving parents.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, moving on, because we haven't got much time left. But social equality. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is because I was reading and listening a lot about it recently from Guardian, podcasts in general, and they were talking about how social equality is a desirable utopia, but an unattainable dream. Do you guys agree?
Social equality in what sense? Equality of opportunity, as is enshrined in the United Nations Human Rights Convention, or
I think
economically.
I think if you look at predominant left-leaning philosophers, thinkers, politicians, etc., I think they want equality of opportunity. It's not opportunity. They want equality of outcome. So they want to make. So what that means is it's not about giving everyone the opportunity to do well equally across the board, but making sure that everyone's paid the same, or making sure that everyone. So moving closer to classic socialism.
I disagree on 2 points. I don't think that classical socialism. I think that's communism. What you're referring to.
Yeah.
And the other thing I disagree with is that predominant left-leaning philosophers or politicians or anyone else, they would not. There's a distinction between communism, which is an unattainable dream, and socialism. There's the famous saying of I asked people why they didn't give food to the poor. They call me a communist. And I asked people why they why the poor don't have enough to eat. They asked me to call me a socialist. There's issue that people are confused between what the two entail. Fine, one is on the table, one isn't. We looked at Nordic countries, Scandi countries, which are fantastic role models for other countries, in my opinion.
But we also we also have to acknowledge the fact that they're dealing with, first of all, a smaller population, easier to implement, easier to control in terms of enact and enforce the law. Secondly, we're looking at predominantly countries with very, very few immigrants.
Sweden would disagree. Norway is increasingly allowing immigration as well.
No, but if you look at proportionally, if you look at London, the first time that a white Englishman is a minority. By that they mean less than 50%.
Okay.
If you look at Sweden, and if you look at Norway, if you look at all the other Scandi countries, that statistic is much, much lower in terms of the non-white native people.
You also have, again, Germany, which was with a left-leaning socialist party in power, although not necessarily anymore. For many, many years, and it can hopefully change the trajectory of how Germans have been portrayed in history, and taking in 1 million immigrants plus, which unfortunately has received some blowback. But they've done fantastically well.
But I'm not sure whether
going back to your question, though,
if you go to Germany, for example, I don't find their policies very socialist, or predominantly. I
free
think
education.
we have that.
Do we? We
Yeah.
have private school. We have a public
So
school.
so have Germans.
And
Germans have private and public schools as well.
And universities have tuition fees.
Yeah, fine.
Which
fine.
Germans don't. In fact, if you're an international student, and a lot of US citizens are doing this, they're going to the Netherlands and they're going to Germany because it's free there.
Yeah.
And that's, it's been enshrined as in United Nations Charter that education is a human right and not just a privilege. But there's an increasing number of people who think that actually a private school education can afford you so much more of the skills and so much more of the opportunities that you can have is much more important and is actually a privilege. In fact, you and I have received a privileged background.
Well, so is Tom, apparently, as I found out.
And so is Tom. And, how much of that is because we're smarter? I don't think very much of it is. A lot of that is because of the school we went to. Look at the Eton front bench, the Bullingdon Club individuals. Boris Johnson is probably, in my opinion, I know we're not supposed to bring in politics here, but he's inept in his job. Donald Trump is not exactly the most articulate or intelligent individual, but they've done so well. One, because of their background, in terms of their education, and a lot because of the prejudice against, for example, minorities.
I don't think that's why they've done well, though.
In spite of the fact, they come from the template of what you should be, what you're characterized as what you should be, where you come from.
Yeah, okay.
Sadiq Khan, the blowback that he got back from the Conservative Party trying to attack on those prejudices is a big deal, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I think in a way,
his father was a taxi driver and all these different things. They do, it's a very rare story that you find the social mobility, the individuals coming from these backgrounds, these diverse backgrounds.
Okay, so tell me, if I'm coming from a low income family, would I not be able to go to university?
How can you afford it?
Because you've got student loans.
And you only pay them back after 21 years of age. But then this is the whole issue. You're trapped in that debt spiral.
Yeah, absolutely. But the idea is that a higher education will allow you to get into a position where you can repay that money.
But this is the whole thing with social mobility. It's very unlikely for you to be able to reach the same level of wealth and have a home and everything else if you're from already a low-income family.
Yeah.
You're trapped in a spiral, which is why actually the white paper by, I forgot the lord who wrote this, but the white paper that came out regarding the university tuition fees was completely against it.
Against what? Sorry,
against social tuition fees.
Tuition fees. Okay, yeah. No, I think. Look, I think overall tuition fees, like in the States, are the same as here. They're not necessarily required to provide good education, as we can see. But the issue that the counter argument that I have against that is, if you look at the top schools, is there a correlation between tuition fees allowing them to get better professors, better educators, and better facilities, which enable them to become the best universities for whatever field that they want to be in?
Well, they need that money for the research.
Yeah.
Obviously, and all these other different things. But going back to the question at hand about left-leaning politicians and looking into looking for equality of outcome in terms of monetary remuneration and everything else being equal. I fundamentally disagree with that on the basis that I think they're much more interested in social mobility and equal opportunity. In the last 30 years, how many prime ministers in the UK have come from Oxbridge and private school backgrounds? All of them, from what I can gather, apart from John Major.
But then, okay, so we have that. But then if we look at the Scandinavian countries, they've actually made it outcome related rather than opportunity related. So Norway said that you can't pay men more for the same job that they do for women. It's the same job that women do
as well. Back in decades ago, they made sure that women are paid exactly the same.
Right. So my question there is that if you look at, so say we take that, because that's a hot topic at the moment, equal pay for both genders. You're both directors at a company, but one of you earns more than the other one. Should you still get paid the same? In terms of earns more for the company, so he makes more business.
Right. So let's say Rainmakers.
Yeah.
So let's say two partners at a law firm. One brings in more business.
Yeah. So actually, let's take your example, because you're a lawyer. You become a partner, and on the same day, a female partner joins you at the desk, at the round table. She brings half of the fees that you do. Do you get paid the same amount?
I think this is a flawed example, because with a lot of law firms, you have lockstep equity stakes and everything else, and you eat what you kill. You don't all get paid the same.
No, but that's the point. Should you? Because that's what Iceland and Norway said that should happen.
Well, no. With law firms, it's different. But let's say a company.
No, but why are law firms different? Why shouldn't it be in the law firms?
Because it depends on the clients you bring in, and it's done on an equity stake and how much money you can bring in for the company. Of course, you're not going to be given, a certain.
But why not?
Why not? Because obviously, if you bring in a more valuable client,
right? So that's capitalist. So law firms cannot exist under a socialist regime.
Well, I mean, some firms put all the money in a pot and share it out.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's your example.
But those firms that can't follow that system. So those law firms that remunerate different gendered partners differently can't then. So I suppose, I don't know. I mean, Tommy, you're in an industry where I suppose it's dominated by men, right?
Which industry is that, Tom?
In the building industry, so landscaping.
Right.
Obviously, there's a lot of barriers, psychological barriers and physical barriers to entry there. In terms of equal pay opportunity, equal opportunity, fair enough, but equal outcome, do you think it's possible for you to be paid for the same amount of money as the female equivalent of you?
Well, I mean, there's different grades, isn't there, in everything? So if I was just a general labourer, on a base wage, and my job was, every day I have to move 500 concrete blocks, or whatever, then and a lady comes in. I mean, obviously, I would imagine stereotypically, I'm going to be doing a quicker job because I'm a big guy, 6 foot plus. I can carry a lot.
I mean, that's debatable whether you're 6 foot plus, but keep going.
Okay, all right, short man syndrome over there, but don't bring that up in seriousness.
Why do you give us bad names,
mate? But say you're a director of that said landscaping firm, and you have an equivalent, a co-director of that landscaping firm who is a female. By the way, for anyone that's listening, I'm not saying that women should be paid less. There can be men that are also of different earning potential for their companies. So in Ash's case, he could be coming up to a partnership with a guy who isn't making the same. And obviously, this is where political correctness sort of has to be taken off the table, because if it was another guy, there would be absolutely no question that you would be paid differently. Absolutely no question. You will be, if you make more money for the firm, say you win business, Tom, for your firm, and the other guy doesn't, there'll be no question that you would demand more money.
Yeah, but I mean, you can be a bit clever about it and do performance-based bonuses, can't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly. But that's the thing. So, but that disparity of wealth in terms of genders doesn't disappear.
Well, let's look at an example which is hitting the headlines with leaked emails from Sony. Jennifer Lawrence making 7%, for example, on a movie, as opposed to Christian Bale, or who's that awful actor? What's his name?
The guy that played in The Hangover. Who was it, Tommy?
Zach Galifianakis?
No. The pretty boy.
I have no idea.
Oh, there
Bradley
you go.
Cooper.
Bradley
I was
Cooper.
making a point.
Bradley Cooper.
How he's probably
Bradley
not
Cooper.
even well known. But anyway, there goes that example.
No, but but then I said to my argument. So Ash's argument was what, that she's a woman and she got paid less,
and she's she has just as many script lines, if not more so. She's won an Academy Award. She's far more gifted as an actress or as an actor than Bradley Cooper, and yet she makes less.
Okay,
madness.
So then I looked at how much does Bradley Cooper earn in terms of revenue comparatively to Jennifer Lawrence. What do you think? We know the answer. What do you think, Tom, is the answer to that?
Well, I would imagine that Bradley Cooper would earn more. I don't know exactly what.
For example, more blockbusters, you're saying?
Yeah.
Which is weird, because she was part of the Hunger Games, but, I'm sure this is flawed in some sort of sense. Oh, Hangover, that must have been his saving grace.
But basically, look, so I'm not saying that she's not a good actress, and I feel like I have to qualify this because I'll be branded as a woman-hating, right-wing fascist.
So being described accurately.
Jesus Christ. But we looked at the background figures, and Jennifer Lawrence, total box office revenue in the films that she was in was something like 2.6 billion.
Okay. Wow.
Bradley Cooper, total box office revenue, 5.8, 5.6, something like that. So we're talking serious disparity in numbers.
Yeah.
So in that sense, when you're looking at your cast in the beginning and you're saying, right, because what you want to do is create a film which will draw the most crowds, right? That's what you want to do because that's what earns you money. Wouldn't you want to pick someone who gives you a load and then pick an actress that can actually bring you money as well, but is also a good actress? But they will be paid based on
on what they can bring for the movie.
Yeah. And it's a bit like footballers. There are some footballers that get $500,000 a week, like Ronaldo, and some that aren't.
Okay, yeah. For example, Ronaldo has better marketing power than Messi, but he's not as good as a footballer.
Well, debatable. He's won three on the bounce.
But the point I'm making.
But I think if you strip away and Jordan Peterson was lambasted. Do you know Jordan Peterson, Tom?
No.
So he's how do you describe him? He's a psychologist. He's a professor of psychology in university in Canada, and he was saying that gender pay gap, the concept of gender pay gap, is false because it's not just gender that women get discriminated against.
He also said that there is no such thing as a gender pay gap.
Yeah, but it's not because that's a very that's false news because that's taken out of context. What he said is there isn't a gender pay gap because there's more than one.
More variables.
There are more variables than just the gender that takes account into the gender pay gap. What do you think, Tom?
I mean, show me the variables. Surely the variables depend on the profession.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. It's a tough one, I think, personally, because ultimately, I think that there shouldn't be disparity between a base rate or anything, but it's not something that you can just whitewash and say, okay, let's get rid of discrimination and different pay, because like we said, it's performance based, and it's whoever's best for the job and whoever's good at the job. If you're an actress and you're making blockbusters and you're making movie firms millions and millions or billions, then there really shouldn't be any difference.
And I think I think actually, I don't think it was because somebody said, hey, by the way, Bradley Cooper makes $2 billion more or $1 billion more in revenue than Jennifer Lawrence. Let's pay her 2% less. I don't think that was the thinking behind that. I think the thinking was, I'm going to be as cynical as I'm going to be quite cynical here. I think it's because they said, it's a woman. Let's pay her less.
Wow. Okay. First of all, I think Jennifer Lawrence doesn't go to Sony Studios to negotiate her own salary. Do we all agree on that?
No.
So you think Jennifer Lawrence goes to Sony and says, "I want to be paid X"?
To be honest, I disagree out of principle, just because you didn't.
Or do you think her lawyers and her agents agree on that fee for her for every film?
I honestly don't know how it works.
I think it's the latter, right?
I think it's the latter. She ain't got time for that.
Surely she should then employ better lawyers and agents to get her the best pay.
Well, surely the better ones are going to be going to the ones who earn more and will therefore earn them more.
No, but if you tell the agent, "I'll pay you,"
well, they should be asking the question: "Hey, how much does Bradley Cooper make on this movie, and how much does Christian Bale?"
But surely that's all confidential. That's why Sony's emails were leaked, and that's when they found it out.
Yeah, but you can still look at their worth, can't you? You can kind of figure it out.
No, because their worth takes in things like investments, which Jennifer Lawrence can't have any control over what Bradley Cooper invests in. But it's for me, it's
some industries are inherently sexist, though.
Yeah, I agree, and there are some absolute bastards that will hire a woman and a guy. They'll do the same job, and the woman will do better or outperform the guy and be paid less. That's not right, and I'm not saying that is right at all. What I'm saying is that it's a merit-based system. If you are bringing in more money, you will be paid more. If you negotiate better, you will be paid more. And I think this is where guys are slightly better, because what happens if you think you're undervalued in your company? You go up and you make it known. You fight. You say, "Guys, I could leave and get 10% more."
Yeah, but we all know that if you were to take that into the, not to bash on Hollywood, but it's a cutthroat industry. So if you go to a movie producer and you say, "Actually, I know that you want me to do this film, but you're paying me fuck all," comparatively, they'll say, "Oh, hang on a minute, who else can we get then?"
No, I agree. And that's what some companies, it's not just the Hollywood industry, that's what companies will do and say, "Well, okay, we don't value you as such, but you don't get until you ask."
I think there's a sea change here. In that industry, obviously, you have the Harvey Weinsteins completely disappearing, hopefully, being removed, and they control a lot of pay. They control who's the actresses and who are these individuals there. And a lot of law firms are having that too. A lot of anti-discrimination suits or partners leaving, for example, head of Baker McKenzie or elsewhere, who've left because of the Me Too movement as well.
Which is right. I think if some people are deliberately being held back because of their gender or their sexuality or their color, that is not right. But what I don't want to happen, at least in my firm, for example, is that my pay gets knocked back because the female equivalent of me, who might not be as good, is getting, and I'm getting the excuse of, "Well, we can't pay you more because Jenny is, we'll have to increase Jenny's salary." That's what I don't want to happen.
But what about, for example, in that movie, American Gangster or whatever it was, the Hollywood actors actually took a pay cut to make sure that they can alleviate it for the for the female actors.
Fine, and if they're prepared to do that, that's absolutely fine. They could have thrown a hissy fit. They didn't. That's fine. So, but that's the thing. It's an elective thing, right? I could walk into that meeting and say, "No, you know what, guys? I don't give a fuck about Jenny. I care about me." Or I could be like, "Yeah, fair enough," if that's the case. But the case has to be so watertight in the sense that she has to be as good. If I feel that I'm better than another person and I'm being held back because of that person's inability to deliver work as I do, I would say something. Wouldn't you?
Yes.
I would, but I also agree with positive discrimination. For example, in Canada, in Justin Trudeau's cabinet, he makes sure that there's 50% of women there.
Yeah, okay, fine.
It doesn't matter maybe there's a man better in the job for education secretary. Who knows? But he needs to have 50% exposure to women.
But I would disagree with that. I think if there's someone who's best for the job, whether it's female or male, they should be hired. I wouldn't discriminate based on sex. I would discriminate based on merit. I would.
But how do you destroy that glass ceiling if you don't start from the top? That's Justin Trudeau's argument.
Well, because you do it by merit. You don't. The thing with positive discrimination, right, is that you then erode the achievements that individual women have made, and you debase them into a lower standard.
So that they're being judged as in the sense of, oh, you only got this job because you're a woman.
Exactly, and that's what I don't want to happen. I think there are plenty of women that can do a hell of a better job of healthcare than Jeremy Hunt could, ever, right? And if they aren't getting the job because they're women, that's wrong. Agree with you. But if they're not getting the job because they're bad at it, fair enough. Anyway, we've covered a lot. This is probably our longest one yet, and you can blame Ash for that.
I thought you were going to take me out for dinner, but
No, we are going out for dinner. All right, Ash.
He says that a lot, mate. He says that a
lot.
Oh,
let me guess. You were starving, were you?
I was fucking hungry.
And then that hunger was alleviated.
It was alleviated at 2 a.m. when we finished packing your room and you took me out for a kebab.
Oh, pretty sure it wasn't at 2 a.m. and also it wasn't a kebab. Oh, right. You mean the first night? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You know,
very expensive dinner. So let's not.
You did take me for an expensive dinner. It was lovely.
We went for Armenian food, which we're going to go to tonight as well.
Nice. Was it worth it?
Lovely. It was fantastic. It is fantastic, truly.
Right. Anyway, it's been real. Thank you very much for everyone that's listening in Ecuador and America and wherever you guys are. We don't hold Ecuador in the highest into rankings. Don't get us wrong. There is no ranking. It's just
we just want to know who you are.
It was hilarious that Ecuador was at one point one of our highest listeners. But no, thank you very much.
And now it's Berman.
Thanks very much for Ash for participating in this podcast.
And the left-leaning government.
Thank you, Ash.
And hopefully we'll hear from him again, and he might talk sense. But no, it's been real. Thank you, Tom, as usual. Do you want to tell our listeners how they can reach us if they have any issues? And I'm sure they will, because this has been an exhilarating podcast.
Yeah, for sure. So you can hit us up on Twitter. So we are at YarnSpinners1. That is the digit 1, not the literal spelling. And you can email us at yarnspinnerspodcast@gmail.com.
Excellent. And obviously...
And actually also subscribe to us on YouTube.
Yeah. So, what's that? Yarn Spinners.
Yes.
I'm so bad at this. Tom is
that's why you...
Tom is our social media expert. So...
All 3 platforms, difficult to juggle.
Anyway, guys, thank you very much for listening, and hopefully you'll hear from us soon.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.